primarily today using Drupal 7. All of the concepts work in Drupal 6. Things are just moving around a lot. The names of things have pretty much stayed the same, and I'll point that out for you. But we're going to focus on Drupal 7 just because we don't have the time to cover everything. If you want to install the views and panels modules, those are contributed modules, not core, so you're going to have to download those separately. You can get them at the URLs here. This presentation is already online at prezi.com. Just search for Silicon Valley, intro to views and panels. If you use Drush, the Drush command download them is right here as well. So, what is views? Views is a little bit like a librarian. You have all of this data that's in this data warehouse, and you have views acting as a librarian and an intermediary to that content. It allows you to filter what's out there and say, if you only say all of the red books, the librarian would look at you funny, but happily deliver all of the red books in the store, in the library. She'll sort them for you when she returns them. So you can say, give me all the red books, but order them alphabetically, or numerically, or by hotness of author. And if you were sufficiently cruel, you would ask for all of the things that you wanted alphabetically filtered and in both periodical and book form. And she'd happily produce them after rolling her eyes and walking away. So let's talk about how we might use views. Here's an example content. For those of you unfamiliar, this is how you would build them. You can find a bunch of fields. For our hypothetical site, we're building Spacely Sprocket's demonstration site. I didn't install Commerce because it confuses things. So we have an image for the cog. We have teeth per inch, a diameter, a material, and a SKU for the product. Now, not all of that information is necessarily useful to everybody. So what we want to do is we want to pare down that information. We want to get all of the cogs out of the system, but we only want to show their titles, the image, maybe the teeth per inch, and the cog diameter. And to go a step further, let's say that we want to sort it by the date they were created. And we only want to show 3 at a time. So what we want to create is something a little bit like this. You guys have seen this on a lot of Drupal sites, so this shouldn't be too difficult to get a handle on. So let's go ahead and add our view. Whoa. What the heck?
We're going fast.
And that concludes the presentation. Yeah. So I actually went through and deleted all of my content before I got up here and forgot to recreate it. So I'm going to recreate some cogs real fast. For those of you interested, this module is called Devel Generate, and it'll allow you to generate lorem ipsum content. It'll also fill in image fields. The utility of this is when you're developing a site, you rarely have all the content available to you at that time. And so what you have to do is work with, say, some lorem ipsum content. So it is an example of what it creates. Here's the content it spits out. And as you can see, here's our title, body, teeth per inch, diameter, material, SKU. It generated all that information just like we expected it to.
What was that called again?
That module is called Devel Generate. It's part of the Devel module. It's a sub-module, so you'll have to enable it separately. All right, so we're going to go ahead and create that view that we just discussed. We click Views. Shows us a list of all the views that are currently on the system. We want to add a new view. So Drupal 6 was a little bit more complicated. They've really simplified things for you in Drupal 7. This page here, this intermediate page, did not exist in Drupal 6. So we're going to skip a few steps by using Drupal 7. We're going to create a view called Show Cogs, because that's exactly what we're doing. And when we look for views later, we want to know what we're looking for. And in that view, we want to show all content of type cog, and we want to sort it by newest first. Well, heck, out of the box, Drupal's just done our job for us. We want to have it create a page, and we want that page to show up at this URL. You see, I've had to do no work at all so far, and I can bill 3 hours. So here's the view it created. Let me do a quick walkthrough on what you're going to see here. At the top, you have the displays. I'll explain what displays are later. What you want to focus on is that this is your view configuration page. So we are only working with a page right now. So we have a title that's going to appear on the page. The format that the information is going to be displayed in, remember I said the librarian would deliver it to us in periodical, book, or newspaper form. The Drupal equivalent is that it will spit it out like this in an unformatted list, or a table, an HTML list, or a jump menu, which I have no idea what that is. I've never used it, sorry. All right, so I went ahead and told it table. I skipped that intermediate page. It tells you exactly what all those settings do. They let you change, header titles and that, and what fields are sortable. So it created a table with all of the titles. Well, we're not actually completely done yet. It's because if you'll recall, we wanted the image to appear here and a couple of other fields. We wanted title, teeth per inch, and diameter. So we want to add some fields. Let's go down the list here. Format, well, we wanted it in table. Fields, well, that's exactly what we want to add. I'm actually interested in teeth per inch. Ah, there it is. I'm interested in diameter. There it is. Now, if you had more than one content type that had its own diameter, you'll notice that it specifies which content type it's associated with. This one, for example, is in the cog content type. If I've lost you guys, don't worry about it. Nobody will know. Let me go back. And I wanted image. So here, for example, we have an image for both for the node article and node cog. If you accidentally chose this one, Drupal wouldn't throw an error, but it wouldn't show anything because there are, in fact, no article images associated with the cogs. That's an important thing to remember when your views aren't working. Double check to make sure all your fields are properly associated. Now, it seems to me that they have a way to do that automatically, but then they wouldn't be able to justify paying us the big bucks. All right, so for every field that you have, it'll give you the opportunity to control the display of each field separately. So in this case, we're going to specify how the diameter field should be displayed. We're going to display it with a thousands marker with a comma rather than a space. All right, we'll go ahead and do that. You could, if you so chose, spend some time looking at these drop-down settings. Not going to go into them because they're not important for the big high-level discussion. But what they'll allow you to do is more powerfully alter how those fields display. So now it's letting us control the image display. Is everybody here familiar with image cache? Is anybody here not familiar with image cache? Okay. Well, image cache was in Drupal 6 a way that you could generate an image profile, say 50 pixels by 50 pixels, scale whatever you give me to 50 by 50. All right. So in Drupal 7, that's been moved into core. So the image cache system is built in. I've predefined some image cache profiles. These are the ones I've predefined. This is a convention that may be useful to you. You'll notice that I named them with the dimensions and what action I used to create. So 150, 150 scaled will do exactly what it says. Well, because we're doing a small table, I'm going to go ahead and scale crop. All right, now teeth per inch, we're going to change it to a comma for thousands marker. Let's go ahead and do our preview, and look, sure enough, there's our table. There is one problem, though. It doesn't look like the table we had in the preview. We want to change the order of it. Go down to fields, and this is unfortunately a little hidden. Rearrange them. So we're going to have the image ahead, then TPI and diameter. So now in our preview, you see that this looks exactly like it, except that it's got a whole bunch of fields and a pager, which we didn't anticipate. Well, use pager? No, we want to display a specific number of items. How many? 3. We already had the sort in there. It was created for us. So this page is already configured to show up at /show/-cogs. So let's save it and take a look to make sure that it actually shows up there. I find that yelling at the computer makes it go faster. And there you go. There's that page that we just generated. And the content's there, and it's in order. If you wanted to configure the oh, we're missing a title header. Well, let's go ahead and take a quick peek at that. This gives you an opportunity. Say you didn't configure those field settings on the first pass-through. You can click here, and the pop-up will be up here again, allowing you to reset it. The problem was we were missing a label. I'm going to add it in there. You know, it also has this checkbox to turn this into a link to the original node. We're going to leave that checked. And let's go ahead and save this. And let's go over here and reload. And poof, we've got our table just like we planned on. Now, I'm going to digress a little bit here. One of the things that always irritated me, and I brought this up, we went to Open Camp, and one of the biggest criticisms that was heard about Drupal was the fact that the administrative interfaces aren't very good, and as much as people don't create administrative interfaces. Well, you now know how to create a listing of content in the database, and all in the difference between an anonymous user's expectations are and an admin user's expectations are an additional field or two. So they might want to see in a field that says edit and a field that says delete. Well, let's go ahead and see if we can do that. Nope. I'm just kidding. So sure enough, there they are, edit and delete. We'll go ahead and add those fields. Now, those security-minded among you might be immediately panicking, thinking, oh, somebody can accidentally expose this and make it possible for an anonymous user to edit and delete content. Unless you override some settings in views, Drupal will not show those edit links and will not show those delete links to users who are not privileged to provide either of those actions. So it's safe to provide those fields. That said, we can go one more step. In as much as you see that there's, under the page settings section, a permission. We can now limit by role who can access this view. So let's go ahead and set it to administrator. And we'll save it. And I'm going to reload this page. And there you go. Now we have a very, very basic administrative interface that we've created for the admin right on top of the very simple interface we created for the anonymous user. And if I were to activate porno mode and try to access the site, is that not what it's called? I get an access denied. Now, for reasons that I'll get into later, this isn't necessarily what you want. You'd probably prefer to show somebody a better explanation of what's going on here. So just keep that in mind, and I'm going to come back to that concept later. So now let's go back to the presentation. We did that already. So there we go. We created it. Success. We can put up our feet, tell our admin that we were going to be done in another 10 hours, and then take a break. Maybe catch up on Dexter. But why not stop here? You know how to use views now, and you can create a lot of these interfaces. You can create anonymous user interfaces. You can create administrative interfaces. You can create interfaces that are specific to resellers. And there's this concept in views I skipped, and I'm actually going to go back to that real quick. I said earlier that you have displays up here. One of the types of displays that you can create from a view is a page. Another type of display that you can create from a view is a block. Is everybody here familiar with blocks? Okay, let me ask more specifically. Is anyone here not familiar with blocks? Okay. Blocks within the Drupal system are a way of compartmentalizing data so that you can put it into regions. You generate the block dynamically, and then you tell it where to go. So if you go to the block administration page, I hate that they moved everything. Is anybody else just as frustrated by that? Every theme that you install will define a number of regions, these blocks that you can drag into regions, and then they display. So you know that we created a page. You can go to that page and you can see that view that we created. You can also create a block containing that exact same information, and that'll now appear on the blocks page for you to drag and place wherever you like. You can not only use the view's permissions to control access to that view, but now you can additionally use the block visibility rules to control access to that view. There are some other options in here. Attachment, that's a little advanced. We might discuss it after if you're interested. Feed is for generating RSS feeds. Say that you have this title image content and you want to provide an RSS feed. All you got to do is create the feed, set a URL, and then anybody can subscribe to it, FeedBurner or their iTunes or whatever they're most comfortable with. Context and content pane, those are for panels, and we'll get into those shortly after this. So why not stop with what we now know about views? We now know how to create a lot of admin interfaces, user interfaces, and we can control the access to the content. Well, there are a couple of limitations to views.
and blocks, frankly. So if anybody who's worked on a complex site knows, after a while of building in some structure to the site, you're going to end up with something like this, which is block soup. Looking at this, can you tell me what blocks are going to appear on the front page? They all do. It's a trick question. Well, no, you can't. It's actually really difficult. And for a lot of complex sites, you might have several variations of every block, and it makes it very, very difficult to come in after the fact and adjust the display of any particular page. It's not impossible. It can be done, but it's very, very difficult. Context and arguments. Say that you have a view that displays related products. There are ways to do that in views. What you do is you specify a filter, a context filter, which I skipped. I'll go into those in a moment. So some filters you specify when you create the view. There are ways to set filters that are specified by the end user when they visit the view. So that you could have select list drop-downs. You can have things that they type in. Well, there are situations where you want to have that provided dynamically. That's what arguments are for. In Drupal 7, I think they're called context filters. That's difficult to do in views. Here's lastly, you saw that we had that page where we created an administrative interface for the cogs so that the admin could log in and do it. Well, what if they forgot to log in and they landed on that page and see access denied? What? Access denied? I have access. That's it. I'm firing my developer. It happens more often than you'd like to know. Now, what would be really helpful here is if you weren't logged in and you came to this page, that something else would appear. Maybe something indicating to you that you need to log in, or that maybe provides some other metadata, say that you're logged in as a reseller instead of an admin. You want to see something different here. So you can do that again with views. It's going to be difficult because you're going to have to do some wacky block visibility rules. All right, so we created an anonymous view and an admin view. It'd be great if we could also create a reseller view along with our admin view, and that we could have a single page that we went to, say show cogs, and based on who the user was, that information was different. If we were coming as an anonymous user, we see a listing of cogs, but say, what did I say? No inventory number or material type, because it's proprietary information. But if they're logged in as a reseller, we'll show that information. And if they're logged in as an admin, we won't show the material because the admin knows it and it's just messy data. And instead, we'll put in the edit and view page, edit and delete links, edit and view. So you can see that there's a utility to that because each of those users comes to that page for a different reason. And we want to anticipate that reason and provide the best interface for them. So what might that look like? This is the same URL. We'll call this show-cogs maybe. Or maybe let's just make it the front page for purposes of making expediency. The admin, they're going to see a layout where there's a big content area on the right, a smaller content area on the left, that anonymous block, or what the anonymous user sees here, and then administrative links there. Oops, wrong direction. The reseller will see a larger layout on the left, smaller layout on the right. I've changed the layout for the exact same page. And lastly, the anonymous user, which you've already seen, we've already generated it, so you know what it looks like. So we want to generate all three of these from the same page visit. So how will we do that? Well, if you'll recall, I said views is a little bit like a librarian, and I hope that that metaphor isn't stretched to the point of breaking, and that you understand where that's coming from, because I've got another one. Panels is very much like a concierge. When you go to the hotel and you check in, the concierge says, "Who are you?" And they won't let you into your room unless you have privileges to go there. And they will show you to the room that's appropriate to your level of prestige. So if you show up with a very large-looking wallet, they'll send you to the top penthouse. If you show up with a smaller one, they'll send you to the Burger King across the street. And based on your perceptions, they may even change how the room looks. You know, if you're there for a honeymoon, they may put roses on the bed. They may have somebody bring chocolates later at night, or tissues and grief counselors. So this is the way to think of both views and panels. Views is the librarian, fetches the data for you, combines it into meaningful packages, and then spits it out in the way you like it. And what panels does is it takes all of that information that you've created and allows you to control access to it and control how the layout of the page is altered. So what is panels? And I'm sorry, I'm going to spend a little bit of time on it because, well, I'll go to the next slide and I'll say why. Panels is blocks with brains. Blocks now understand context. They can use information about who's logged in, what they're looking at, and when they looked at it to provide the display of information. You can control layout, and the reason that's important is because one of the fantastic things about Drupal as a CMS is that it allows you to formalize those abstractions between what defines a software architect, a software developer, a themer, and a mock-up designer. Because you can have all four of those archetypes working at the same time. The themer can be working on their CSS and their embellishments and their drama, and the architect can be putting the site together, and the developer can be doing all the real work. But we can all be doing it simultaneously. See, the power of panels is that it gives you control over the layout of the page without having to resort to that daemon CSS. It also gives you a number of advantages behind the scenes without you ever having to think about it. So what does it mean that panels have context? Context feeds views in as much as it tells the view what we're interested in seeing. So in the case of related products, I want to see products that are related to this product. I want to see products created by this author. I want to see products created by gentlemen who have measurements of XYZ. I don't. Awkward. And you can choose layouts based on context. Again, role, user ID, permissions. You can use a lot of context. What are examples of context? Well, the user, again, their role, their user ID, their username, logged in or not, whether or not you're looking at a particular user, the node you're looking at, nodes that are related to the node you're looking at, the author, the fields, the node ID, taxonomy terms, URL arguments, strings, node ID, search terms, custom contexts that are defined by your developers, and they're therefore incredible. And what do they act on? Well, you can act on the content panes, which are module panes, custom panes, views panes, blocks, nodes, content, fields. I'm trying to really wow you guys. You blend it all up and you get a spigot. Panels! Now, here are the background advantages of panels. They're reusable. If you create a panel and you like it and you want to reuse it on another site, Features knows how to consume them. If you guys, anybody unfamiliar with Features? Okay, well, 2 people. Well, sorry for you guys. So, so you can take the panels that you've just created and you can export them and reuse them somewhere else on a different site. If you've created this great blog layout with a blog administrative interface and a blog review section and a feed associated with it, the views and the panels are both exportable and reusable. So you can create a content pane that, say, defines author info, the picture of the author, their name, and maybe some contact information. You can reuse that pane on multiple pages throughout the site. You can use it on different sites. Exportable, I just said that, so I'm going to skip it. Free extras. The panel system provides caching for you. It caches at multiple levels. The view block will cache whatever it generates. The panel system will cache whatever comes out of views, and it'll cache the entire panel, and it'll also cache the page, and then Drupal's page caching system will cache that, and then if you've got varnish, then you've got a headache. So now you also get free context in the way of tokens that are additional tokens that will be provided to your custom content panes. Say that you want to generate content on this new panel page that you're generating. If you're feeding it appropriate context, you can use tokens from those contexts. Let's say we're feeding it the currently logged in user. We can now say, hi, currently logged in user, and then use that information. All this adds up to a smoothie of victory. Huh? Nothing. Yeah, that's what he said. All right, so let's go ahead and oops, jumped too far ahead. Let's jump into panels. So before we do that, we want to actually create that demonstration that we showed earlier. We're interested in doing this. So I imagine a lot of you might think of a couple of different ways that you might do that in views, and if you do, it'll take you about 20 minutes and 2 hours to implement. I'm going to show you how you can do it in panels. Give me about 15 minutes. First up, we're going to create a content pane for the anonymous user. You'll notice that I just added a content pane to an existing view. This is a display. I'm getting another display to the same view. So because I'm reusing the view, all of the fields I defined for that page are already here. Now in the case of the anonymous user, I don't want to show the edit link, so I'm going to click that. For this display, I want to remove it. And actually last night we did this and it did it on the page too. So I'm just going to make sure it didn't. It did. I don't know why it's doing that. We'll just add them back in on the admin pages. It's easy. All right, what did I just delete? All right, so there's our anonymous content pane. Preview it, that's what it looks like. That's exactly what we expect. Let's go ahead and save it just so we don't lose our work. Now we want to go ahead and change the name of it. We're going to say this is the anonymous pane. What are these? Show. Now, this is in a way that I'm talking about in terms of organization. To avoid that block soup, you can specify a category. Let me show you again where I was doing that. Under pane settings, it has this category drop down. Let's specify that we want to have this under show cogs. I'm going to copy that. All right, let's add another content pane. This one's going to be for reseller. Crickets. And the reseller, if I think that they had what? Material? Okay. And let's add another pane. This one's going to be for the admin. They're actually making excellent time. And for the admin, we're going to add two more fields. We're going to add those edit and delete field links. Does everybody understand what I'm doing here?
Yes, you're going really fast.
Well, I think that I'm going a little faster than I anticipated, so what we might do is just go over any of the sections. So I think that'll probably be the best use. So now let me go ahead and review, make sure that we don't have this appearing here. Nope, no edit link. There's a delete link, so let's make sure the admin overrides it. One of the things you noticed I'm doing here, for this panel pane, it says override. What this means is that I want this pane to be unique with respect to this field. I don't want the other panel panes to be affected, or the other view displays to be affected. That is to say, this view has the material diameter, TPI, title, and image field, but we don't want it to have the delete field. So we're going to go ahead and remove it here. We want to keep it under admin. Make sense? So we've got the basic view. We're just making modifications to it. So let's go ahead and save this. And now let's go to panels. So we're going to go ahead and create a panel page. This is like any other page that you create the site. It's just panel powered. Show the cogs. We're going to have it show up on a page called front because we're going to make it our front page. So now when we go to the landing page of the site, we're going to get this panel instead. We don't care about access control because we actually are going to be, depending upon the role, display something differently. Access control would be either you have access to this page or you don't. Selection rules we are going to care about because we want to select a different panel variant based on who the user is. Contexts, yeah, we want context. We want to know who the logged in user is. Visible menu item, it's the front page, so it should be fine. Selection rules. I'm going to go ahead and skip it for now, and we're going to come back to it. One of the nice things about the new panels and the new views interfaces, there's only one path through this process, and they guide you at every step. You can't really go anywhere else until you answer the question about whether or not you want to have any particular context here. So we're interested in user context. We want to see the logged in user. Depending upon what modules you have installed, you'll have more contexts to choose from. So let's go ahead and continue. We're going to use the builder layout. You have a couple of predefined ones for you. You could use single column, 2 column, 3, or miscellaneous tends to contain the ones that are defined by the theme. We're going to start with a builder. So this is our first variant. And there is what it spits out by default. This is what a panel variant looks like without anybody editing. It can be a little intimidating because here now you are with no idea where to go next. Well, you'll recall that we wanted to create 3 different layouts for the different users. So what we're going to do first, we're going to create a layout based on what the anonymous user was supposed to see, which looks like this. Looks like about 300 pixels on the left and then a fluid region on the right. So let's add a column to the left, make it fixed, drag that out about 300 pixels. Let's add a row in there and it contains a region. And don't worry about this, this will come to you with experience. We're just going to call this left. And now poof, we've got a left and a center region. This one's 300 pixels wide, and this one's fluid to fill the rest of the area. Now, on the anonymous page, we have a user login box on the left and that anonymous view on the right. Let's go ahead and click here to add content. And where is that? I believe it's under user. User login box. And then you recall that I named the category view last 3 cogs. There are 3 panes that we defined in views. Show anonymous cogs, finish. So there you go. We've created our first panel and panel variant. So now if we go to the home page, well, you don't see the user login box because Drupal's smart and doesn't show it if you're already logged in. But there's your layout. Widget on the left, this on the right. All right, so let's go ahead and add another variant. Let's call this one Reseller View. And then this one, sorry if I'm skipping over it. I can slow down a bit. What a variant is exactly what it sounds like. It's a variation of what this panel is going to do. In the first variant, we're going to show the anonymous information. In this variant, we're going to show the reseller. Well, now you ask the question, how do you get panels to choose between them? Well, you tell it. You say, the selection rules for choosing this variant, I want to use the role, and I want to make sure that the user has the role reseller. This logged in user bit, this comes from the context that you guys defined when you created the panel. We're going to use the builder again for this variant. And in the reseller's case, we have a larger area on the left, smaller area on the right. this one right. Make sure this is about 300 pixels. So you can already see that this is terribly useful for you for subverting having to rely on your designer for the layout changes. Make sure that it saved it. Yeah, it did. Good. So we're going to rename this one. Anonymous. They said it was intimidating and boring. So you saw how we added the content for the anonymous one. Let's go ahead and do the same thing for the reseller box. And then this one we're going to add show last 3 cogs. We're going to add the reseller pane. Oops, that's not actually supposed to go there. It's supposed to go on the right. You can drag and drop it and replace it. In this case, we actually are interested in keeping it here. Was there anything on the right in the reseller? The anonymous view. So here's what I was referring to as reusable. If you were to have to do this in blocks and wanted to display it both on the left and the right, you'd have to create 2 blocks because you can't put them in more than one region. So in this case, we're able to reuse the anonymous view pane to display it on the sidebar on the right here. And try that again. There we go. Let's save that. And I'll quickly go through creating the admin one. Works exactly the same way as the one we've just shown you. So, add variant. This is the admin view. So you can see you can actually use more than one context to specify whether or not any particular variant is chosen. One of the things that you might rely on in addition to the user is if you override the node template, you can use taxonomy to control the layout and display of the view, of the panel rather. So that would give site builders, the people who you turn the site over, control over how their content is displayed. They could choose a taxonomy term and then the display could be adjusted accordingly. And I'm just going to shorthand here and only provide the admin pane. All right. Pop over. Whoops. The problem you're seeing on the anonymous page, we've got a user login box displayed here twice. The reason for that is that the block system still applies. So the configuration of the theme says display the user login block on the left sidebar. Well, in panels, we're also coding it in the left, but the panel is being displayed in the content area. So we want to disable blocks and regions for this particular panel. All right. Anybody know why the view is not displaying? We limited permission to that view based on role. So because they weren't signed in, they weren't able to see it at all. Now you can override that permission setting on a per pane basis. We're just going to set it accessible by all just so we can show you what it does. So there you go. That's what it looks like when you're not logged in. And hopefully it'll look different when you are. It looks different. All right, hold on just a second. They say the difference between practice and performance is knowing what you're doing. Oh, I know why. I didn't specify selection rules for this one, so it always passes. So it gets chosen because it's first. All right. So boof. Now we're all looking at the same page. We're going to the home page, and the admin, when logged in, sees administrative links. The anonymous user does not and sees a login box. The layout can differ based on who you're currently logged in as. If I were a reseller, I'd get a content area on the left and a block section on the right. So you can see that this gives you the ability to control what the end user is seeing based on information that you provide to the panel. That information can come from a lot of different places. One of the things we didn't talk about in terms of panels is that you can override nodes. So when you override a node using panel, I'll show you real quick. Well, I really didn't think I'd be able to get through that in 33 minutes. All right, so a node template is a special type of panel. It lets you specify what kind of node that you're going to be overriding. So whenever you're looking at a node of that particular type, say a cog, instead of seeing the traditional node view that you would normally see, or even the template override, you're going to get the panel display that's specified for that content type. When you use a node template override, you get additional contexts. You get the fields, you get the taxonomy, you get the author, you get the user relationships, comments, etc. And all of that information can be used to control layout and block visibility and content pane visibility. You can also take those contexts and feed them into views to adjust how the views display things. So I think, where were we? Oh, this slide was supposed to come earlier. But I think you can appreciate it more now. One of the problems that we have when introducing panels is it is complex. It is really scary. There are a lot of things to keep in your head while you're working with it. It is really well worth the investment because it takes you from being able to deliver an adequate site to being able to deliver a superior site. It also allows you to more rapidly adjust a client request, because when somebody tells you that they need you to change page XYZ to have this block now in the bottom region, or they don't want it to appear on any page, or they only want it to appear on XYZ pages, well, you can see how that becomes a maintenance nightmare. Not only because you, now knowing how the site is built, have to go through each of those blocks and configure them distinctly, but if you didn't know how the site was built, you would have to go through the configuration of each and every one of those blocks to make sure there were no surprises. You can see with the panels, for each page, you go to the panel configuration, you look at the panes that are being displayed, and you check the contexts. So,
what about all the
casualties of the war against the machines. Dun 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 dun. Yeah, those are WordPress users. Aren't they cute? That's not supposed to be there. Oh, it is going through it again. Yeah, I think we're pretty close to the end of the presentation, so this will be good because then I can go into scenarios. So, yeah, this was my final slide. If you guys can't get enough of the Drupal, then we have Drupal Camp South Florida coming up. It'll be superior in every way, except the ones that count. Really, the only way it'll be superior is you can see a beach. So, with that, I hope that you guys got a high-level understanding of what we went over. I would like to go back into views and discuss how filters work and maybe how arguments work, if nobody wants to see that and wants to talk scenarios. Interest?
I just have a question when you're going through the views part. You built a view and then you went to panels within the view construction page.
No, it's a separate thing. Yeah. Yeah.
Now, there's a drop down that
There's
says
another
panel.
context. No, the content pane, that's new to Drupal 7.
No, when you install panels, you'll have the ability to create a content pane and a context. Yeah. Yeah, let me go ahead and go into the views interface.
I'm confused.
That's all right.
It's not a feature with my parents also, or my users also.
There's also a module called views content that allows you to put views content in panels. You have to enable that one as well. Yeah, and views content module.
Content pane is not a panel.
Yeah. Yeah, we can quickly go over the modules review. So here's our list of views. We're going to go ahead and look at the view we created here. Does anybody have any questions about views in general? Everybody kind of gets that concept, or they're too embarrassed to admit it?
Oh, add content pane. So what? Explain.
Sure. So again, what views does is it provides you with a mechanism, a tool to take all of the data that's in the database,
Sort data and all that.
yeah, filter it, munge it, and then put it into a package that you use that package somewhere else. I mean, that's the key. It doesn't necessarily do something by itself. You should think of it as an intermediate step. What Views does is it munges the data, puts it into a consumable form, and then puts it out there for you to use somewhere else. It'll either create a page, which you can directly display, or it'll create a block, which you can place in a region based on your theme, or it'll create a content pane that you can use in panels. Now there is a subtle thing here. You can put blocks in panels, or you can put panes in panels. The difference between a block and a pane is that a pane can understand context.
Put a pane in the block.
You can, strangely enough, yeah. But yeah, yeah, you can create blocks from panes. It's a real pain.
Blocks of pane.
The 6:30 show is completely different from the 2:30. So does everybody kind of get a good idea of what Views is doing for us? So what I was hoping to do with this presentation is not necessarily have you walk out of here going, yes, I know how to use 5 minutes. My clock's fast. All right. I didn't want you guys to walk out of here saying, yes, I know how to use views and panels. I can now jump right into it. I wanted you to learn enough of the keywords so that you'd know what to Google. Right? So, and if you guys like, I mean, I'll be up here. I'll put some cards up here. So if anybody has any questions about how to do their particular implementation, they can take my cards, send me an email, and I can send them a link to let me Google that for you. No, but realistically, I would happily offer some assistance. Even if you don't decide to spend some time working with us, we'd be happy to help you with your project and to guide you. We do a lot of these community things so that we can try to make a name for ourselves and really help the community that's supporting us. So with the concept that I wanted to teach you keywords, this whole section here is a view. The page, the block, the content pane, ignore the man behind the curtain. These things that I created up here, these are called displays. These are views displays. So what they are is basically windows into the view that you've created. Now, you might ask, why not create a completely separate view for each of these? Why not just create a separate view that way that it's all compartmentalized entirely? I very well could do that. One reason why you might want to keep all of them in one place is in this example, all 4 of these displays show a title, teeth per inch, a diameter, and maybe the material field. Well, let's say that later on down the line, the rabid client comes to you saying, oh my God, I can't stand the image that small, I want it larger. Well, if you had created 4 separate views, that means you're gonna have to go to 4 different views and change that image size. Whereas if you're using this with 4 different displays to the same view information, as long as you haven't overridden that image, you can specify it once and affect all 4 displays. Now, there are huge advantages to that because, of course, it's never just one small change. It's 15 small changes. So it's great if you could do that all in one place and bill for the 5. The other thing is there might be issues where you're creating a display that is so dramatically different from the rest of the displays that you, at that point, you might decide that it's a very good idea to go ahead and split that out and separate it into a different view. There are two reasons for it. One, because you're going to forget what you've overridden and what you haven't. And two, if they're that dramatically different, you might want to separate them out so that you can export one type without having to worry about taking along cruft with the other. When I talked earlier about the fact that you can use features to export panels and views, what that means is that you can have a production and a staging version of your site, and your live production site, they can be adding content on a regular basis. Traditionally, prior to the introduction of features, the way that you roll out a site is you painstakingly pull stuff out of the database, or you'd do a database dump and push it to the live site. You'd lose all changes between the two of them. If you use this, if you use panels and views, you can package up this configuration into a feature and only push out that configuration change. That is to say, they want the images bigger on that view, you can package just that change up, send it over to live, enable it, and then not have to worry about overriding content. There was another point I wanted to make. I don't remember. Any questions? Sure. So let me show you filters first, because that's an introduction to what an argument is. Do I have enough time? No? Okay. All right, excellent. So let's add a filter. We have, let's see, what's a good one to filter by? I'm trying to think of something that will make sense to filter by. Material. I should just use the search. So you recall what a filter does is it limits the information you're getting back. Well, we're actually not interested in doing that for the user. We want to let the user decide what material they want to see. So what we're going to do, we're going to expose that filter. And this is just an option that appears in the filter field configuration. You can limit what fields they're able to select, but we're just going to let them do all. And you can also allow them to select multiples. So when we do this, this is what the view now looks like. They have a drop-down list to select these options. Well, that's fantastic. That's great that they are able to choose the options themselves. But what if we wanted to, based on the page they're looking at, pre-select that filter? Well, instead of exposing it, we want to make it so that if you go to page cogs/ handwavium, that you get only cogs of that type. Now you could create a separate page and a separate view for every one of the different material types, but you can see how if you were to suddenly add 6 different material types, you'd have a big job ahead of you. What would be really great is if you could make it so that dynamically, based on what was typed in after the word cogs, the material was automatically selected. That's exactly what the arguments does. The arguments allow you to choose a filter and then specify, they're under here, under advanced, under the scary stuff. They're called contextual filters, but if you're using Drupal 6, they're called arguments. So we're going to still select material, and you're going to have quite a few more options here. Among them, what happens if somebody doesn't specify the filter? What happens if they don't say what they want? Well, in our case, we can show page not found. We can give a forbidden error, I think. No forbidden. You can provide a default value. Say, if they don't specify, always show the unobtainiums. Or you can display all results or your empty text. And the rest of it I'll let you read. So we are show-cogs, and this is the page version? Yeah, we have a material. So let's look here, steel. I want to make sure it works before I go previewing it. It does, excellent. So we added the context filter for material, and then I specified steel as the material I was interested in. It applied that filter to the view. So now you can see that you can dynamically create an interface that is specific to the type of material that you're interested in. If we were to take this a step further, and this was a panel page, that argument up there is context. So we can use that context to choose whether or not to display additional content. Let's say that if they were looking at a steel listing of products, we offer warranty on those products. So we display the warranty information box and then make them purchase it, or automatically add it to their cart and add them to our mailing list.
What if I wanted to add sorting to the head?
All right, that's a good question. He asked, how is it that you got so awesome, Jason? Well, sorry. We are formatting the output of this particular display, this page, as a table. The table has some settings associated with it. I skipped over them because there's actually a lot here. You have a lot of configuration options. But among them is whether or not that column is sortable. We're going to go ahead and make these all sortable. Why this is so fascinating to me is, you know, back in the day, that used to take hours to write. And so now with 5 clicks, you're done. So now let's go back to our page. And now they're sortable by title. Absolutely. Unless the client is watching. Not you guys. No. No. Yeah?
Are the filters and or can you set that?
Actually, he asked whether the filters were and or whether or not you could set that. The answer is yes. You can specify, let's see, where were they? They moved things around on us. Where is it? Oh, the contextual filters. Yeah, they work the same way. Well, I mean, the contextual filters and the regular filters are both filters. There used to be a way to specify and or. I'm actually going to have to come back to you on that. There used to be an option in here for and or. Yeah, I don't know where it is. What he asked was, can you go over here? There is, I don't know where it is. By default, they're anded. So if you filter by steel and by some other material type, then you're not going to get any material. You're not going to get anything unless it's possible for content to have multiple attributes or attributes. I don't know where it is. I'm sure you can do it because it was so prominent in 6. Yeah. It was there? Well, that's not what we're looking for. No, that's if you wanted to specify multiple materials on the same line. Yeah, no, we were talking about interaction between the filters. And I don't know why it's not there.
Do you have to have a second filter before the show?
That's a good point. Give that man a cookie. Yeah, no, it's not showing up. I don't know.
Google it.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a question for Google. Yeah, sorry, I don't know. Yeah. Anybody else have an easier question? Well, I hope that everyone got something out of this, even if it is, oh my God, I'm never ever going to use panels. And feel free to contact me if you want. I'll put together a BOF session for going over views and panels, again, to talk over your particular scenario. If you have something that you want to build and want ask questions about it, I'm happy to answer those. Thank you.